Well, congratulations on your new Giant TCR Advanced one. This is a fantastic bike, so well done. Look at the colour work on that. That's awesome. So here's a quick walkthrough for some of the bits and pieces you need to know to be able to get the most out of your bike. Stuff that you would have been told when you picked it up on handover, but probably far too excited about riding it to take it all in. So let's go over a few things that are useful in looking after your bike and getting the most out of it. Let's start up at the top. Here on the back of the saddle is a space for a giant uni-clip. Now, if you buy a light or a uni-clip mudguard, they are specific to this. You can, there'll be a bracket to help you install them here. What that means is you get this light that fits neatly in here and it doesn't clutter up your seat post or anything. So that's worth looking out for. On your gears, because they're electric, you've got actually button cells in here and in here, which power these two shifters. Those should last you about a year, if not more. The rest of the bike, the gears, so this front derailleur and the rear derailleur, are powered by a battery which is in this seat tube. So if you're ever going to move this seat tube up and down, just be careful that you're not disconnected. If you pull the seat tube up, remember there's a wire attached to the battery inside the seat tube, which comes down out the frame to this down here, and that's what this wire is to here. There's a small light here, really hard to see when it's not lit up, but what this does is give you an idea of the battery life. So if I press both the up and the down paddle at the same time, the light goes on, shows that the charge is green. It goes green if it's charged, red if it's low charge. Same on this one, little light there. If I press both buttons at the same time, there we are, gone green. To change gear on the rear derailleur, it will be set up normally with these two buttons here on the right hand side. This lower button here will make it go harder to pedal, and this little one here will make it easier. Front derailleur, that's the two big shiftings. That's done with the left hand shifter, and as standard this will be set up with the big paddle making life easier and the little paddle making life harder. That can be adjusted in the Shimano app, but I wouldn't because you'll confuse yourself. On the rear derailleur there is a small button here, and if I press that, it lights up a little light here. That's green to say the level of charge, and it will also at some point go blue to say it's trying to connect the Bluetooth. Now, although there is that little button on the rear derailleur, you don't need to press it. You can press it every so often if you want to check the battery level, but that's all. You don't need to actually turn the gears on to start riding. You just start riding and start changing gear, and it will wake up and start doing its thing. The Bluetooth element, if you do have a head unit like a Garmin or a Wahoo, the gears will talk to the head unit, and so you can set it up so it will show you on the screen which gear you're in, and it can even show you the battery level as well, which you may find useful. A quick word on gear management. You want to try and keep the chain line, which is the direction the chain's facing in, as straight as possible if you can, which means you want to avoid the extremes. You want to avoid having the chain on the biggest ring at the front and the biggest ring at the back. You also want to avoid having it on the smallest at the front and the smallest at the back, because that creates angles that the chain doesn't like being under. So when you get to, if you're going through the gears and you get to about the middle of the cage and you want the cassette and you want to start going even further, then change down at the front, because it helps keep that chain line straight as possible. The other thing to make sure of is that you're not changing gear under too heavy a load. So try and anticipate your gear changes and keep your legs spinning adequately to make the gear change easily. This, believe it or not, is as oily and lubricated as the chain should be. This is a brand new chain, and it is pre-lubricated. If I just run my finger along there, you can see, if I press against it, you can see it leaves a slight residue. Now, what will happen is the chain lube will leave the chain as it goes around, and it will start to leave residue on the jockey wheels, on the cassette, on the chainring. That's natural, and that stuff needs to be wiped off, and the chain should be wiped clean. But we never want to have lubricant on the outside of the chain or on the other side of it, because all that does is pick up bits of grit and dirt, and then that acts like sandpaper and wears away at the cogs and just means you wear through everything far too quickly. So at the end of a ride, wipe the chain down to get off all the excess and the dirt that you've picked up. But don't necessarily have to re-lubricate it. And if you do re-lubricate it, and just put a dot on each of the pins and then run it round and then wipe it all off again, wipe off all the excess. Now the brakes are hydraulic disc brakes, so there's a reservoir up in the shifter, and that feeds the hose all the way down to the calipers down here. And these have got finned brake pads. That finned aspect lets the air come in. It helps the cooling of the brakes to keep them working better under stress. You can get a non-finned version when you're looking to replace them. Non-finned version is a bit cheaper, but it isn't as efficient. All these holes in the rotor are there to help with cooling of the bike, of the brakes, to stop them overheating. If you're going down a really steep descent, you want to try and modulate your braking, come on and off the brakes to give the rotors and the pads a chance to cool down a bit. If you just lean on them a little bit all the way down, eventually this will bronze, you'll burn your rotors, and your brakes will make horrible squeaking noises. Try not to touch the rotors. Even grease from your hands will rub off on there. Eventually that goes into the pads, contaminates them, and then everything squeaks. With that in mind about looking after the rotors, if you were cleaning and oiling around here, try to make sure you're not going to splash on the other side onto the rotor. So I've seen some awful videos of people spraying like GT85 or WD-40 on here, and all the like spray of it, mist of it is going over onto the rotors, and that will go into the pads. It's going to make it a mess, so don't do that. Now, these wheels are set up tubeless, which means there's no inner tube in here to replace. We've just got inside here. Take that cap off, dust cap off. There's your valve. Open that up a bit, so undo that bit, full of air. If you want to put more air in, that's how you get it. Set it up, put the pump on, pump it up to the required pressure. If you wanted to replace the sealant or top up the sealant, that silver core, this bit here, that's what you need to take out. And so you'd undo the whole thing. And there'll be a valve core removal tool, little tool in the box with your bike, that allows you to do that. Undo that, pour in some more sealant through the valve, and then put that back on, tighten it up, and away you go. If you're out on the road, you get a puncture so big that the sealant doesn't seal it and you need to put an inner tube in just to get you home, you would need to remove all of this core as well. Easy to do, you unscrew everything and pull it out, but just make sure that you know what you need to do there. So there you are. Quick few tips on the TCR Advanced 1. Cracking bike. Hope you enjoy riding it.